Hello everyone. I'm going to continue my PfSense step-by-step series. In this section, we're going to be looking at the firewall area. Now, the first thing I'm going to hit on is aliases. Aliases are excellent resource. You can have rules that reference a specific host. For example, here is my Baycam. Now, typically, I could put the IP address in a rule, and I might have 50 different rules for different hosts. And then what happens is I have my IP address. I need to change my IP addresses. Well, instead of having to go in to each rule and change that IP address, I only have to go here to the alias and change the IP address. My rules reference the alias, so I have a one-stop shop to change the IP address of the host in question. And it could be a host, it could be a network. In fact, let's go to add here, and I'll show you. We'll add test. If I can spell test. Again, always unscripted, folks. Testing. And let's say we want to make this a network. Okay. And I want to say I'll say 11.0. And I'm going to say 24. Where's my 24? Test. So then you can see here that I've set up an alias for that network. So I can simply reference test in all my rules, and that'll reference that network. And if that network ever changes, I simply come in here to my aliases and I edit the network here, and it automatically updates all my rules for me, which is wonderful. Aliases are just, I can't say enough good things about aliases. I love them. Just about anyone that works with a firewall loves them, especially if you have a lot of rules defined. So I'm not going to do anything with that. I'm going to delete that. This is a production firewall. So we're going to leave that go. Next, I'm going to move into network address translation. And I'm going to try to move along as fast as I can on these items. Network address translation works two ways. And it actually can work, but it actually works three ways, if that makes any sense. The first way that it works is inbound. Okay, inbound network translation, we want to do a port forward. If we want to forward a specific port for inbound traffic, here you can see we have port 80 forwarded to my alias, Baycam 1, and that's a port forward. And when traffic goes back out, it's going to go back out using the automatically generated NAT rules. Okay. This is just like a consumer firewall in the sense that I can add here the traffic's coming in on the WAN. What type of traffic is it? Is it UDP, TCP? We'll say TCP. I'll just set one up for example here. I'll say HTTPS, or if the port or service you want is not listed, you can say other. Okay. You can forward a range of ports. This again is where aliases are wonderful. I can put an alias in there. And I can redirect it to a different target port if I want to. I'm going to say test for description or testing. And the cool thing about this is we have filter rule association. So when I go in here and I set up my port forward for inbound NAT, it's going to automatically add the rule unless I take this drop down and say none. So just for kicks, I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm not going to apply the changes because I'm going to come back and delete this. But if I go to Firewall and then Rules, I can now see that a rule has been generated and stored for the inbound port forward that I just created. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I'm going to delete that. I don't want to allow that. Okay. Apply my changes. Go back to NAT. Delete that. Outbound NAT. In most scenarios, you're going to use automatic rule generation. Okay. In certain scenarios, you may need to do manual outbound NAT rule generation. Okay. And the way this typically would be done is you would have a catch-all rule, which would basically be automatic NAT, and then anything that you wanted to control specifically to go out in a certain way, you would specify before the catch-all rule. And then that traffic will, if it meets the rule criteria, it will behave in that fashion. And if it doesn't, it'll go down the list. And finally, if it doesn't meet any of the rules that we've set, it'll use the automatic catch-all rule. But if you set anything up in here, it's important that your catch-all is at the bottom and your rules are at the top. Your custom defined rules are at the top. Otherwise, the catch-all is going to get it and your custom rules will never be applied. One-to-one NAT is something that's very useful if you have multiple external IP addresses and you have network address translation, you have the firewall there, but you want it to appear as though that server is, for all intensive purposes, out on the internet. So you're mapping a public IP to a private IP. And inbound traffic, all inbound traffic will go to that IP address internally. And when the traffic goes back out, it will go out on that same external IP address. This would be one scenario where this would be important would be in the scenario of a mail server. When it sends mail to another mail server, it's one of the things it's going to do is a reverse lookup. And if you don't have a one-to-one NAT here, everything goes out to the default address of the firewall. So your MX record is obviously going to be different from the default address of your firewall, and that could cause issues. So here you can set up one-to-one NATs, which will allow you to control how the traffic behaves between your internal server and your external IP. It gives you that control, and it gives you the appearance that you're out there on the internet with that external IP. So we're not going to specify anything in there, and I'm going to leave that there. Rules are exactly what they say. For your WAN, most of your WAN rules are going to be automatically generated through either port forwarding or one-to-one NAT or so on. So I'm not going to get too much into the WAN rules. What I will get into is the LAN rules, and you can set a number of different things here. As you can see, we have unrestricted outbound access. Here you can lock down certain things. For example, let me uncheck that. I'm going to add a rule based on that. And let's say I want to block HTTP. Okay, any traffic coming from the LAN subnet. Destination can be any destination, or you can specify network, an alias, a host, but I'm going to leave it at any for the purposes of this demonstration. Destination port, HTTP. And I'm going to say testing. Now I'm not going to save this rule, because if I do, it's going to block all web traffic from going out. I can also log packets that are handled by this rule. I'm not going to do that either. But down here we have a bunch of different advanced features we can set here. I mean, we can set the operating system. We can set flags. We can define a schedule, which we'll get into in a minute. We can define queues. So this is a very powerful firewall solution. So it's important to take note of the rules and all the control that you have with the rules. And it really is a great. I love PfSense for that. If you have IPsec, in this case we do, and all traffic is allowed across the tunnel to pass through the IPsec tunnel. But you can also control your traffic that's coming across the IPsec through the rules. The next item is schedules. Schedules are exactly what it says. It's a schedule. If you want to block certain traffic for a certain time of day, we must first define a schedule. So I'm going to say test, description, test, schedule. And I can select my month. My start time and my stop time. And then I can set the schedule repeat. Now once I set this, it'll appear in the rules area, and I can apply a schedule to my rules. Schedules can be used for a number of different things. But mainly rules. So again, the developers have done an excellent job of giving a very brief to the point explanation of what schedules are for and what they do. The last area, I'm not going to look at the traffic shaper because that's not something I'm going to dive into under the firewall. I think that deserves its own dedicated segment. The last area is virtual IPs. Okay. The virtual IP address defined on this page may be used in NAT mappings. So remember where I discussed one-to-one NAT. When you first set up the firewall, you're going to set up your interfaces. Okay, so the WAN interface, you're going to have one IP address. This is where you set up your additional IP addresses. And it can be on the WAN or the LAN, but they're used in NAT mappings. They can be used for CARP, which I'm not going to get into in this particular video, but you know, this is where we can define additional IP addresses. And again, if you look at the notes, we have a wonderful description of what this is. So that pretty much sums up the firewall area, folks. It's a very powerful area in and of itself. PfSense is, I can't say enough good things about the product. I love it. That's my choice for a firewall, and this is why. It just has so many configurable options, so much tunability. You can really get down to very low level on things and really have a lot of control over your network. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this up. If you have any questions or comments, or if I got anything wrong, let me know in the comment section or send me an email. As always, I hope you find this information useful, and I thank you very much for watching.